Welcome back to the BCS report. He's Brandon Clay. I'm Marcus Burnett. Appreciate you joining us, man. This is just a great time of year. NCAA tournament time, March Madness. I know we're both chomping at the bit to get to that. But let's first touch base on Damon Stoudemire, newest head coach there at Pacific.
Well, the thing you got to understand about Stoudemire is, for as chronicled as his basketball career was, he's done a great job in the afterlife already from a coaching standpoint. Originally from Oregon, so going back to the left coast, but has spent some time obviously at Memphis here, previous job, but was at Arizona, played at Arizona, was at Memphis before that, so a lot of good things have happened. Even spent some time at Rice right after his basketball career ended in the NBA. So well-traveled, obviously the right side of the country, the middle, and now back to the left side. So I think that for a guy with Stoudemire's playing background, his career, the numbers that he put up was Rookie of the Year. I was telling Marcus, I remember playing Sega Genesis, Coach K college basketball, Stoudemire and Khalid Reeves in the backcourt for Arizona. And so to see him now become a head coach, have full faith that he has an opportunity to do something special out there in California in a sleeping giant program that is Pacific. They've got the resources, obviously the location, and now hopefully for them, they've got the coach as well.
When we look at this scenario, and we've had some banter just there with some of our colleagues, whether it be a Sean Williams on the Radar Hoops, Kyle Moore, they're our international director of scouting, just talking about Memphis, that coaching situation that's in flux. I use air quotes around that because Pastner's in there, but there's still been some talk about Stoudemire possibly being the heir to that throne, but he's headed to Pacific.
Well, and I think if you're Stoudemire, this is a good time to go ahead and get your feet wet as a head coach. And I know that Josh Pastner catches a lot of flack. It's tough to follow up John Calipari in Memphis. It just is what it is. You know that when you walk in the door, you realize that and you take that on. And the same reason that it's tough is the same reason that you can get a Dedrick Lawson to come and play. The same reason they've been able to get some of the type of in-state talent to stay home that they have straight out of high school. And Pastner's putting that thing together. At the end of the day, this business is one of wins and losses. You got to find a way to win, and you got to find a way to make it to the postseason. We talk about March Madness, Marcus. You've got to be in the NCAA tournament, and you as a global you, regardless of what's happening. Actually, right before we got on set, got a call about Yvonne Sanchez in New Mexico on the women's side. Her contract was not renewed. So at the end of the day, it just is what it is. It's a big-time business. There's a lot of money attached to these positions. These people are vice presidents in charge of departments, even if the NCAA doesn't want to treat it as that. That's what it is. And at the end of the day, you've got to provide the winning percentages to back up the compensation that you're getting. Hopefully, Damon will do that out in California.
I think the fan base has been a little hard on Pastner. Like you mentioned, it's hard to compare him against that benchmark of Calipari. But then I think another thing that bears fruit when you look at being under his coaching tutelage, the fifth assistant to become a head coach after leaving Memphis, with the others being Willis Wilson, Jack Murphy, Jason Gardner, and also Luke Walton.
Yeah, well, and Gardner, again, when you start talking about the Arizona tree, Pastner played there at Arizona, was on the bench during the Mike Bibby years underneath Luke Olson, And you talk about a Jason Gardner that played point guard for them, Luke Walton. So definitely a lot of ties from Arizona back to Memphis. And now, like some of those other guys that have gone on, Luke Walton, maybe the best coach in NBA history to not have a single win or a loss, right? To all those wins and losses still go to Steve Kerr. So be interesting to see how that thing plays out. Plenty of talent there, and Pastner's doing a great job, and we'll see what Stoudemire can do at Pacific.
All right, I think first of all, we did a good job, and I started right off with the NCAA tournament. But let's use this Arizona Stoudemire topic as a segue into this year's current dance. But let me wax nostalgic for a quick second. How much fun was it to watch those Arizona teams back in the day? You mentioned Bibby, you mentioned Pastner, Miles Simon, Gilbert Arenas,
Richard Jefferson,
Jason Terry. I mean, man, it was just fun basketball.
Hey, no shortage of players. Unfortunately for them, last night ran into a buzzsaw. When we talked about pre-production, going with from a bracket standpoint, what you think is the best player on the floor. Who's got the best player on the floor. And fortunately last night, unfortunately for Arizona, but fortunately for me, Wichita State, I felt like had the best player on the floor at any given moment, and they were able to come away with a big victory. Sean Miller was literally sweating through his shirt. He was working so hard on the sidelines, but a tough loss there for the Arizona Wildcats last night.
That Wichita State team is always a team that this time of year that they're going to be well coached and they're going to be a tough team to get past.
Well, and that's become just, you talk about dynasties and programs and things like that at the mid-major level. Wichita State is approaching the Gonzaga level. The reverence that you have for Gonzaga year in and year out. Another team last night that pulled an upset, Marfuse Bunch, back at it again in March. And Wichita State has done a great job of really establishing themselves in that way. Greg Marshall getting that thing going when he came out from Winthrop, and they've just really gotten on a roll, found a rhythm as a program here in the recent years. So it was a lot of fun yesterday. My bracket was cool. I went 15-1. I was feeling great. Day 2's not looking so good. We'll get to that in a minute. But day 1 definitely was good, whether it was Wichita State, Gonzaga, Arkansas Little Rock with the big... I'm sorry, man. My bad. My bad. Y'all got to understand, man. This guy is an Indiana Purdue guy to his heart, man. So I know he took that one tough yesterday. But, hey, I called it. I knew it was coming.
Yes, you did. And it's a prime example of, this is a big dance, big moments. Higgins was unstoppable scoring the ball there down the stretch against Purdue. I mean, you got to take your hat off there. Derek Fisher in the stands there rooting on you.
Right? Small world, man. Little Rock alum. And I remember this quote from Santana Moss football years ago. Big players, big games. Big players for big games. And this definitely was a case of that. And what a great win. You talk about programs trying to establish themselves. And on the women's side as well, Little Rock has done a good job in the postseason as of late. Who's going to become the next Wichita State? So now we're starting to watch those storylines develop. Now that Gonzaga is a perennial, March contender. Wichita State is putting themselves in that mold. Who will be next to become the person that we're looking at every year? And it very well could be a Little Rock.
And let's look at some of the other day 1 elements, including, one of the major upsets, Yale able to get that 4-point victory, 79-75 over Baylor.
Well, what a great win. You talk about a program and a team that honestly backdoored themselves right into a win, literally. All the cuts, and they had Baylor spinning. Baylor is a team that normally likes to play zone. Even had to come out and try to play some man because Yale was scoring at such a high clip, and Baylor had a shot there at the end. Lost the basketball, down 2, fought back. Scott Drew's team did not fold under pressure. Came back, did everything that you would have wanted them to do, put themselves back in a position to win the game. Some big shots by Prince and some of the other guys en route to doing that. Turned the ball over with 2.5 seconds left, down 2. So, it was just a great day yesterday as I was sitting in the office watching, taking it all in. Had my assistant Taylor Johnson was in there with me. I was on the phone at one point with Antonio Davis from ESPN during the Little Rock game, and we're talking about the overtime scenarios and everything together. It was just a fun day, and I want to make sure we shout out to Brandon Mayweather, who had one of the coolest setups that I've seen. The projector with 2 TVs. Michael Hooley down in South Florida sent me a picture that I'll post a little bit later to social media. He had like 3 TVs, a couple of laptops out, so everybody really having a blast with it. Day 1 was awesome. Day 2, off to a good start as well.
I'll tell you one question that I won't ask about day 1, even though I've got plenty, is how Yale out-rebounded Baylor. Did you see the response to that?
2 hands. The ball comes off the rim. They put their 2 hands on the ball and came down and landed more than we did. What a response to that, right? What do you say? There are no follow-up questions to that. You just drop the mic and walk off the stage. But, the coolest thing about what has become March Madness is there still is a regular season element that is very important from a seeding and automatic qual standpoint. Even in the Ivy League for a Yale, where as of this moment they don't have a postseason tournament, they actually are going to institute one on both sides of the basketball in 2016 and 17. So keep an eye on that. They have not had that. They've just taken the regular season champ and immediately given them a bid. But then you also have this dynamic of everybody filling out a bracket, right? Now I saw a number yesterday, ESPN, a record 13 million brackets were filled out, and the productivity at everybody's job site drops. And it's almost that Super Bowl feel, but during the week, right? The Super Bowl's on a Sunday, so the Monday after is where your productivity lags, but it's after the event. This is actually during the event, so it's really, really cool to see people who honestly don't care about basketball like that. I was sitting with somebody the other day, and they were picking Texas Tech because their brother's cousin went there, and I'm like, how do you even get that? That's the most random thing I've ever heard. And there are people who win brackets every year doing
Just
that.
because of that. Right?
Yeah, they make me mad for the record, but I understand. So I'm not too mad, but I am a little upset because they take a couple of dollars off my family's table, man.
So we look at some of day two action. Some of the games that have already taken place: Villanova handling business, cruising past UNC Asheville.
That's about the only one I've gotten right so far for the record.
Yeah, tough sledding so far. Dayton, Syracuse, one of the ones that both of us got wrong is Boeheim's bunch able to upset Dayton.
And Malachi Richardson got busy. 2015 guy, All-American, one of the guys that we covered, BrandonClayScouting.com. Absolutely loved Richardson's game on the club circuit. New Jersey Players was a guy that saw some run with Team Final, saw them match up against the Players. And, Richardson was really good in that game. The Players had Isaiah Briscoe. So, just seeing all of those types of dynamics. Now, Briscoe with Kentucky in this year's tournament. Richardson obviously representing the orange. And to see what Boeheim's group has done, coming out of a little bit of controversy, the past couple of years with some scholarship reductions and things like that. This is still the month of Boeheim right here. So they're off to a good start with the big win. And Richardson, I think, had 25 in today's game to get the orange rolling.
Let's look at some of the matchups that are looming moving forward. I think one matchup to keep an eye on is going to be UNC versus Providence. UNC came out with a convincing victory over Florida Gulf Coast. But coming up against the Providence team, I think it's been underrated and under a lot of people's radars. They got to watch out. Big upset watch there with Chris Dunn and those guys.
Well, we had Chris Dunn in the 10 semifinalists there for the Naismith National Player of the Year, and for great reason. If you haven't seen him play just yet and you missed last night's game versus Southern Cal, you're in for a treat tomorrow when you get an opportunity to see him square up against Marcus Page. Page has struggled a little bit coming off of the injury, hasn't really gotten into form, so that's a great matchup, especially talk about the next level and what that can bring, even in terms of the NBA draft. It's a great measuring stick for a guy like Page on where he is in terms of getting back, because Dunn's going to push point blank. He's going to get up and down the floor, he's going to make life tough for you, and then he's going to score the ball on the other end. It should be a great one, and honestly, North Carolina was a little sluggish yesterday. Thought they got it rolling in the second half. Florida Gulf Coast was dialed in and ready to go. They put up a great fight against a very good team out of Chapel Hill. Roy Williams' bunch played the ball in the second half, and if they can sustain that throughout the course of this tournament, we very well could see them on the final weekend.
I think Bryce Johnson, his length and the way he uses it to really wreak havoc on both ends is going to be a big difference for the Tar Heels.
That young fella's playing like dinner's on the table, man. I mean, he made a couple of plays yesterday. Rebounds the ball. Talk about rebounding, man. Getting both hands on it, right? Finishes and then just to let you know that he's there and that he's in the building. And he's played like that all year long. I know we mentioned 39-point, 23 rebound performance earlier in a previous episode when we talked about the Naismith Awards. But now you're getting two semifinalists in Johnson and Dunn squaring off in round two. March Madness.
Hey, my Purdue boys are out, but we look at a couple other Hoosier State representatives. Indiana versus UK, Hoosier State versus Bluegrass State, the traditions clashing. That one can tell its own story. Look forward to seeing that one.
It was great. When you looked at that one on paper, when the brackets were released, to see that game in those two programs when it's in the second round, right? So you're watching Tyler Eulis, another guy that's a 10, Naismith going against Yogi Ferrell. It's hard to put somebody in front of Eulis who is speed, similar size. When you've got that, and you've got that in the second round, I can't wait to see him push, get up and down the floor. Jamal Murray has been absolutely fantastic, and quite honestly, I think he's the difference maker in this game on paper. His ability to score the basketball on the perimeter, his size, his length, he's transformed his game from being a point guard at the high school level to being one of arguably the best perimeter scorers in college basketball in less than 12 months. So very excited to see what he brings to the table in that matchup. But when you're talking about these types of games, right, and then the winners of these two games will play each other, it doesn't get any better than this. You've got to love it.
And Butler already have made one upset happen, but that's an 8-9 upset. So really, you flip-flop that, not much of an upset at all. But they'll take on the University of Virginia. Malcolm Brogdon, his old coach at GAC, right up the street at Buford now. His draft stock continues to rise. Talk about that matchup and the Cavaliers avoiding that upset.
Well, Brogdon, Player of the Year, I mean, it just does it. To be a guy defensively that plays as hard as he does, but then also be able to score the ball offensively. And he's a guy that can make mid-range shots. He can make the three. And I remember watching him when he transferred into Greater Atlanta Christian years ago as a high school prospect. thinking, man, this kid's got a good frame and he's got some tools. He wasn't the most athletic in terms of quick rises and leaps, but he just finds a way, and he's so strong that physically he's able to impose his game, his style, and his will on you. Even if you don't want to play that way, it's hard to be better than him to actually force the issue and keep him from getting done what he wants to get done. Absolutely love his game, and it was good, honestly, to see Tony Bennett be able to come back onto the sidelines for the second half of that one. A little dehydration, it's so tough. These coaches, you think they don't care, sleep and lack thereof, and continuing to work out and do all this stuff during March Madness, man, they're up and immediately getting turned over with the scout for the next game. I think you saw an instance of that, Marcus, yesterday with Bennett having a moment there at the tail end of the first half, but fortunately all is well. And then I think on the other side for Butler, this speaks volumes to what they've been able to continue to do after Brad Stevens left Hinkle Fieldhouse for the NBA. He's done a great job in Boston. Butler has continued to roll right along. And in the process, they've got themselves a great matchup with a chance to put Butler back on the map once again if they can find a way to knock off the Cavaliers.
We touched on Stoudemire earlier. Let's move the conversation over to another coach with a great pedigree, NBA career-wise as well as college-wise. Kevin Ollie and UConn. Those boys continuing to fight. They'll take on Kansas in the second round.
Well, it seems like an every year thing, right? You get to the postseason and you're mentioning Kevin Ollie. You look at the run they made down the stretch. Marcus, 6 basketball games ago, UConn was on the verge of not making the NCAA tournament. 6 games later, they have a conference championship under their belt postseason, and they have a first-round victory. And a first-round victory, honestly, where I had them defeating Colorado in my bracket. And Ollie, Ricky Moore, Carl Hobbs, that entire staff, they just do such a great job with the guys that they have. Whether it's a Purvis, a Daniel Hamilton who came from St. John Bosco. I remember watching Daniel Hamilton sitting in the gym at City of Palms. He played alongside a guy named Tyler Dorsey. And I text Jonathan Hemingway and Kyle Moore and Sean Williams and said, fellas, this Hamilton kid, man, he's got everything. He's got the length to do it. He can make shots. He's smooth. And then the bloodline, multiple people in the family now have gone on to play at the professional level. So UConn continues to find a way to scrape, scratch, pull, and claw. And remember now, the last time they were sitting as an 8 and played in the 8-9 game, they came away with the hardware. This time 9, but the same 8-9 game of the win. Be interesting to see if they can find a way to beat Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
They'll always defend. The energy level will be there. From Coach Kevin Ollie on down. The big question will be, can they match that offensive firepower? Can they score enough points?
It's tough, man. I mean, Kansas is really good in that regard, and they have multiple ways to beat you. We talk a lot about Wayne Selton Jr., who had arguably the dunk of the year the other night. I mean, literally put the Baylor kid on his back en route to flushing that thing. But Perry Ellis has been arguably the best offensive player for Kansas this year. So, where do you go? And I think that becomes the question in the tournament when you start to look at these teams. I talk a lot about picking the team that has the best player on the floor, and I do think, obviously, there's a truth to that. But the second tier of that is, how many players do you have that can make a basket? Where teams can't sag and play 5-on-3. They have to play 5-on-5, and now you've created your mismatches for a Selden, for an Ellis, because they're getting single coverage. And if somebody chooses the double, then you've also got your spot kicks and your reads that you can make, and you've got guys that are capable of knocking those shots down as well.
Video game talk-wise, Hamilton has a high clutch rating in my book. I think he likes taking the big shot if they can stay within striking distance. He's a good guy to have the ball in his hands late. Remember a flashback moment when we broadcasted the Chicago Elite Classic. Bosco was going up against Jaleel Okafor and Whitney Young in that one. Hamilton gets it at the top of the key, splashes a 3 game-time route in front of everybody from Chicago's mayor to even Derrick Rose and his brother.
He's so smooth, man. Like, it doesn't, it's not like he hits that shot and he just takes off running around. He's got his jersey in the air. He doesn't have any of that to his demeanor. He's going to hit the shot, hit you with the cool nod. And you mentioned Derrick Rose. There's a lot of Rose's demeanor in Hamilton's game. Very cool, calm, and collected. He might give you a little scowl or something to let you know that he's in the room.
Here, right.
But outside of that, you're not going to get a lot of emotion per se. But he's a guy that definitely plays the game with a passion and a consistency that Ollie and the Huskies have relied on all season long.
Well, the games have started. They're continuing to roll on. We could roll on this topic forever. A couple closing thoughts as we get ready to wrap this one up.
Day 2 looks terrible for me so far. Cal's losing. Temple's down 1. I need some wins. Come on, fellas, let's go. Nah, this is easily my favorite time of year. I made a post yesterday on social media that talked about March Madness, and it's the best 3 weeks of basketball all season long. I love the NBA playoffs, I do. But there isn't that quick finality. There's definitely, from a series perspective, WNBA as well, right? You can lose a game and you still come back and play another day. Nah, man, if you have an off day, you don't shoot it well, somebody doesn't show up, somebody rolls an ankle, any number of variables that you really have no control over make this the best 3 weeks of the season for a basketball junkie like myself. I'm excited. I'm ready to get back to this television, lock in, and check the action out.
And that's the case year in, year out, but I just had an underlying feeling coming into this tournament, unlike any other, that it was really going to be a topsy-turvy kind of bracket, just in terms of the parity.
And nobody's been able to hold the number one spot. I think even in years past, there are some upsets, Marcus, but people hold the number one spot for 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row at some point during the season. We haven't had that. Oklahoma had the number one spot for like 12 days. Then Kansas had it, and then they lost. And literally people have just passed it like a baton, man. It feels like a 4x400 relay the way folks have passed the baton of the number one spot around. And now here we are at a point where, honestly, as we're sitting in the studio right now, Michigan State is down 6 at the half to Middle Tennessee State, and Denzel Valentine very well could be the National Player of the Year for many people on their ballot. So when that's happening, you've got a great game, and everybody involved has done a really good job of creating the parity. And we talk about the one and dones and two and dones. Those guys leaving help to create that as well, quite honestly. They go get a check, but then it leaves a whole vacuum of superstar guys that would average 20, 25 a night who aren't here, which makes the game more competitive and better all at the same time. So it's been a blast. I'm looking forward to it. Heck, we're only 36 hours through it, man.
You mentioned you had Euler picked to beat my Purdue Boilermakers. Do you have Providence beating North Carolina?
I don't. I've got North Carolina advancing out of that one. I think the depth, as much as I like Chris Dunn, North Carolina's depth. You talk about a guy like Hicks last night, and when you mention North Carolina's front court, you talk about Kennedy Meeks and Bryce Johnson. Those are the two names that come to mind. Well, Hicks comes in and goes ham last night, right alongside Johnson. So I feel like the depth issue for Providence, Theo Penson's another guy that is a rotation guy for Carolina, but arguably the third best guy on Providence. So we'll see. It's going to take a spectacular effort from Dunn, but he's capable of doing it. So stay tuned.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say no offense to the UNC Tar Heel fan base out there, but the Friars are going to have stuff to cook, and I think Providence is going to upset UNC here in this one. So
and that'll only add to the intrigue, man. I'm cool with it.
Well, hey, he's Brandon Clay. I'm Marcus Burnett. Appreciate you joining us on this episode of the BCS Report. Until next time.
Any Jim is home.